Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Alicia Jarrett. Alicia is a passionate and driven global real estate investor based out of Australia, conducting deals in the United States. She co-owns multiple businesses, including Global Citizens Holdings, Inc., Land Scouts, and Supercharged Offers. Focused on leadership in business and investing in land, her business ventures provide efficient real estate marketing and world-class data solutions, which assists other real estate investors to digitally transform their business for increased results. Alicia is also an experienced leadership, executive coach, and a business management specialist. She has coached many leaders, including entrepreneurs, business owners, and C-level executives. Alicia has a passion for seeing others lead well and succeed in their business and teams. This combination of global experience and having an entrepreneurial mindset sees Alicia excel at building and growing business partnerships, providing business and leadership advice, and enhancing results for others. A truly passionate and people-focused leader who really does love all things real estate and travel. Alicia, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Kendall, I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm always excited when I get to talk to the Alicia Jarrett because I know that we're in for an amazing time to geek out about land and figure out how to get to the next level in our business. So I'm just beyond excited.
Let's go. I can't wait to jump in. I want to swoosh past that whole intro because, that's just words on a page. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of it all and talk about marketing, talk about how we help some of the people on this call.
I love it. Let's get down to brass tacks. So first question, for those of you, for those that may be listening that don't really know a whole lot about your background, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got started in
Yeah.
multi-channel marketing and specifically the new cold calling that
Yes.
you've started to implement in your business?
Sure can. Oh, there's so much to unpack even in that first question. So I'll keep it brief because I can see like about half the people on this call I do know, but obviously there's a whole bunch of people in here that I have not had the pleasure of meeting. So for those that don't know me, but you can tell by the accent, I'm an Aussie. So it is winter over here in Australia at the moment, but I'm heading back to the States on Saturday. So it'll be good to get back over there. We've actually been doing real estate now in the US for coming up 9 years, Kendall. And I've seen the market go through cycles in those 9 years. So been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But we started off doing fixing, flipping in houses and had a couple of buy and holds and a few rentals. We then got into vacant land about 7 years ago and have not looked back. Vacant land is where it's at, people. And let me tell you, I get single family people that come to us to do marketing for them. And as soon as we start talking vacant land, their ears prick up and they're like, maybe I need to leave houses and do land. So yeah, land is where it's at. So why did we start cold calling? Well, for those that do know, we've had Supercharged Offers now going for 5 years. And the main reason why we started Supercharged Offers was, let's face it, guys, I'm going to be selfish here. We started it for ourselves. We wanted to have an all-in-one where we could have all of our data, websites, ads that we were running, all the different marketing channels like direct mail, etc. We wanted that all in one because up until that point, we had 6 companies that we were working with to get that stuff done. And we thought, surely there's got to be a better way to get that more efficient. So hence we created it. Didn't actually think that it would become what it is, but we're super proud of the fact that we get to work with so many awesome customers. And now we've introduced cold calling. So why did we do that? At the moment, we're in a seller's market, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And so when you own a marketing company, you always need to be cognizant of where the market is at and what marketing channels are working best or not working best at that moment, and then adjust accordingly. So we're always evolving our products and services to be able to offer more to our customers. The second point to that, though, and you'll see when I get into the detail here, guys, we're doing cold calling a little different. So we did see what was out there in terms of the cold calling offering with a number of different companies. And we just said, what can we do to add more value here? And so we'll get into that shortly where we'll talk about how we're doing things a little different.
I love that. And so we've talked about this before, but I resonate with so much of that because I was from the single family house space as well. Then I went over to saw the error of my ways and now I'm in vacant land and love it, haven't looked back. And it's been often said that if you are in the land business, or if you're in any type of real estate business, really, that you're dealing with leads, you're running a marketing business, right? Like you are marketing to get those leads. And so this topic of omni-channel marketing has been something that we've seen creep up in the last, especially last probably a couple of years or so. Can you talk a little bit about exactly what is omni-channel marketing and what
Yeah.
made you realize that was the route to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So omni-channel marketing, I do actually have a slide here that I want to get to just because we've got some people here that are quite visual. So let me just put up a visual while I talk to this, right? So multi-channel or omni-channel marketing. The main reason why you need to be omnipresent with marketing, guys, is about all of this stuff here. Demographics, first and foremost. Sellers are all types of people these days. Now, when I say all types, the reason why I'm putting that point up first, Kendall, is like 7 or so years ago when we first started doing land, most of our sellers were pretty old people, right? But as we've gone through different market cycles and we've gone through COVID, our sellers now are all kinds of people. We got people in their 20s and 30s, all the way up to their 80s and 90s and everything in between. So demographics then dictate how you should approach marketing. And if you're only doing, say, one marketing channel, you're leaving deals on the table based upon the communication preference of your audience. So what do I mean by that? So I always use myself as an example here, Kendall. So for those that don't know, I'm about to turn 49 in a couple of months, but I look at myself as middle-aged, right? But I'm a digital person. How I do business and how I communicate is digitally. If someone's calling me or sending me direct mail, I might not respond to that. But if they give me their website, or if I see an ad online, I'm the kind of person that will click on that, go and do some research, and then make a decision. So we need to be cognizant that we've got to have an ecosystem that attracts and nurtures our leads and meets them where they are at. Not where you're at, where they're at. We get a lot of people coming to us that, oh, I've only ever done direct mail, or I only ever do SMS. And I'm like, that's great. But imagine if you did all channels, and we get across 7 channels of marketing. Imagine if you did all channels, could there be, just go with it here, could there be the opportunity that you might get an extra deal or two a month because you're being cognizant of the fact that your demographic is so large? So that's really about omni-channel marketing, to make sure that your leads have got ample opportunity to see you above your competition.
That's such a great explanation. And I think one of the things that stuck out the most for me when you were talking about that was meeting the sellers where they are, right? There's different seller demographics, there's different seller psychologies, and we have to be able to use the right channel to be able to even start having communication with those multi different seller types. So that's a really, really great explanation. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
So one of the things that I get asked a lot is which marketing channel is working the best? Can you talk a little bit about, I know that's probably a loaded question because there's so many different variables, but can you talk about what you're seeing that's working really well for this current market?
Yeah, look, Jennifer, cold calls. Yes, cold calls. Exactly, Jennifer. Cold calls are working best. And why is that? We're in a seller's market at the moment, guys. For those that don't really understand the difference between sellers and buyer's market, any market goes through a cycle. Now, that typical cycle for vacant land is about 7 years. And I'll say that's a typical cycle for real estate, to be honest. So in any 7 years, we're going to go through a buyer's cycle, into a seller's cycle, back to neutral, and then back again. Why? Inflation rates, interest rates, supply and demand, all of these factors at a macroeconomic level impact what we do on a marketing and therefore the market that we are in. So the fact that we're in a seller's market at the moment, what does that mean? That means that sellers have more control of what they want to sell their properties for. Sellers are bargaining harder than ever before because they want as much as they can, because the macroeconomics are driving them to get as much cash as possible, right? This is all about buy and sell and supply demand. That also means, though, that you've got to be speed to lead is probably the thing I'll say here, speed to lead. You need to get in front of them as quick as possible and then have that conversation and build that rapport, that trust, and make your offers as quick as possible. Best way to do that at the moment, cold calling. Now, does direct mail still play a role? Absolutely, it does. And what we're doing is leaning into the direct mail as an add-on to, say, cold calling. So a lot of our customers are still doing both, and we're still seeing responses in both. But over the last few months, response rates for direct mail have really pulled back a little bit. Now, a lot of people are like, "Look, that means the market's not working." It is, but what we've got to do is adjust our strategy for where the market is at. Just like I said before about meeting our sellers where they're at, we've also got to meet the market where it's at. So yeah, at the moment, I know that's a long answer to your question, but at the moment, it's about cold calling for me is you're getting quicker responses. They're in your ecosystem faster. So therefore, you're able to build that relationship and make your offers faster.
Yeah, that speed to lead is, I think,
Easily.
probably one of the biggest things that I'm noticing in my own business in terms of that could totally make the difference between you getting that contract and someone else. Say that there's someone listening to this and they're saying, "Okay, but I get pretty decent response on my text campaigns because I've been texting and I've been doing this." Can you talk a little bit about quality of lead? Because that's something that quite a few people have brought up. I've noticed a difference in my own marketing campaigns in terms of the types of leads. They fall somewhere on a spectrum from like a temperature spectrum, a little colder to a little bit warmer. So can you talk a
Yep.
little bit about where cold calling kind of falls on that spectrum?
Yeah, but before I talk about that, there's some stuff in the chat here that I just want to recognize as well, because a lot of people are talking about SMS and text messaging. Guys, here's my view on this, and I'll talk about that when we get to some stuff on TCPA and compliance. If your cold calling's working for you at the moment, go for it, because there will become a point in time where it won't. And the reason it won't is because either you'll get caught, your platform will get caught, you'll get cut off, or the TCPA will have something to say about it, because texting, it's actually not compliant. If anyone wants to go and delve into the legislation around it or have a call with me one-on-one, more than happy to. But the whole thing with SMS marketing is people must opt in order to be marketed to. Now, the platforms have got a way of getting around that. But personally, for me, one of my biggest values is integrity, which means I'm not going to do something if the legislation in black and white is telling me not to. Okay, so when we talk about cold calling in a moment in a bit more detail, I will talk about compliance. But to come back to the type of lead, remember what I said a few minutes ago, guys, about it being a seller's market? Yeah. In a seller's market, the seller's motivations are going to be different to what they are in a buyer's market. So buyer's market is where all of you on this call have more control of the conversation, more control about offers because people are more desperate to sell. Okay. And the benefit, therefore, sits with the buyer. At the moment, the benefit's sitting with the seller, which means when we use that word motivated seller, when you're in a buyer's market, there's a lot more motivated sellers. When you're in a seller's market, the motivation is lower. Their curiosity is still there, but their need to sell and their desperation to sell is not as high. Okay, again, think about this from a macroeconomics level. What you want to think about there is cold calling is about getting them into your lead flow, into a conversation with you, but they might not convert tomorrow. This might be a lead, and same with direct mail though, guys. Direct mail is the same kind of lead as a cold call lead. Most of them are just curious about an offer and they just want to check you out. Your job, everyone on this call, is to build that relationship and make multiple offers and keep that going. So coming back to the quality of lead, for me, the lead is a lead. I personally do not care where a lead comes from and how motivated they are, because what our skill set should be that we're focused on for everyone on this call is how can I build that relationship and that trust with that property owner? So when they are ready to sell, I'm the first person they think of. So I want you, everyone on this call, to move away from quality of lead and think about, let's not move away from quality altogether, right? But don't think about the entire, how motivated is this person? Think more through the mindset of, can I have a conversation with this person about the property? Can I keep in touch with this person? Is this a property I want to make an offer on? And if so, how do I keep that relationship going? That then turns into a quality lead.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you talked about in terms of every lead is going to require some amount of work to get them on the phone, right?
Especially at the moment, guys.
Right, absolutely. And so there are different types of different, I guess you would consider it timelines or different amounts of work might vary to get that lead on the phone. depending on what type of marketing channel you're using. So what I mean by that is, for example, when I was sending out tons of text messages, I needed a full-time person just to be able to go back and forth on those text messages just to drive them to a phone call. So can you talk a little bit about what are you seeing some of the conversion from just your typical, this is the first initial outreach for this particular marketing channel into
Yep.
driving them to a phone call? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the things that we're actually doing different, guys, with cold calling that we couldn't find out there that would do this is warm transfers. Now, are they the be all and end all? No. But does it get them into your system earlier? Yes. So warm transfers. So imagine this. The cold caller, they're on the phone with someone. Let's say they're on a call with Gordon, because Gordon's next here on my little list. And Gordon's got a property and he's talking about that property and he's really open in his conversation. He's curious about an offer. We're going to call Kendall straight away and say, Kendall, we've got Gordon on the line. He's really open about his property. He's talking about it. He's curious about an offer. I'm going to connect you now. Now, that whole purpose of warm transfers does transform what happens next, because all of a sudden that seller has gone through a pretty quick process of qualifying the lead, getting them over to you having that first conversation with them, building that relationship and doing expectation management. Big thing. I want that in bold and underlined. Expectation management. What do I mean by that? If you can say to that property owner, look, I really do want to have a look at this property. I am buying deals in the area. Give me 24 hours. I want to go run some numbers now that I've had a conversation with you about your property. And in 24 hours, I'm going to be calling you back on this number and it will be at this time. And then I'll be talking to you about an offer for your property. Does that sound okay? Now, if we put ourselves in the shoes of a seller, I now know you, probably am starting to trust you, probably am starting to like you, because you're telling, so know and trust are three things in marketing we got to lean into. And I now know what's going to happen next. What we find with things like SMS and cold calling, where the lead gets sent to you, but it's not a warm transfer, is you've almost got to start at zero. Now you've got to get them back on the phone, start the conversation again, pick up where someone else left off. And it tends to put a little bit of a dent in that conversation flow. So warm transfers, yeah, Marty, warm transfers help eliminate an entire call sequence for us, because we can qualify them in one step and schedule an offer call. Marty, comment of the day. And yeah, I completely agree. You're bypassing that whole clunkiness in the workflow and really getting to the speed to lead, right? Speed to lead. That warm transfer makes all the difference.
Yeah, that is fantastic because I know several people that I work with might even have a hard time getting that warm lead that was reported, getting them back on the phone, right?
Yeah.
Just to have that first initial call. So that completely removes that. And also, the other thing is that I love so much about warm transfers is you were just talking about know and trust. I can't think of a better way to frame your authority as the cold caller actually saying, let me transfer you over to our buying manager. Now you are the person that has a specialty. And
Yeah.
so I think that's really,
Or let
really
me transfer you over to the owner of the business. That whole thing
right.
about elevating in their mind. Oh, I'm now going to speak to the person that might buy my property. Oh, I'm now going to speak to the owner of the business. So whatever we customize on the script, we want to position that so that they're now feeling like they're important.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't know how many people have ever played around with things like, or sites like Zillow or Redfin, but they use these warm transfers where if you call a number on a property to be able to maybe go view the property or something like that, they will immediately do a warm transfer to a realtor. That way they can now start working that lead. And it really does, there's just so much benefit to that
Yeah.
because while that seller is in the mind frame of, I want to sell, I want to talk about it, then let's have that conversation because we don't know where that
Now.
seller is going to be when you do call them, right?
Yep. And none of us know what tomorrow holds, right? So the minute we can have that conversation, the better. And just to Jennifer's point on here, she said, want some control over the timing. Absolutely. So when we set up our campaigns, and I've got a few people on here that are working with us at the moment, we will find out, when are you available? What CRM do you want us to put leads into? If you're not available, what email do you want us to send the lead over with the recording, so you can listen to that call beforehand and then go and call the person back? There's ways of working that we can work with our customers to maximize their availability. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jennifer.
that's really good. Ken has a question. He says, wouldn't that motivate them less as it is another step instead of directly seller to buyer ASAP?
I'm not sure if I understand that question, Ken.
Yeah,
So would
Ken,
it,
can you give us a little bit more clarity in the chat here?
yeah. So is it another step? No, it's actually a removal of a step, Ken. So when you've got a warm transfer, immediately that connection is made. So therefore you can start that conversation, set the expectation, and now you've got that direct to seller, direct to buyer conversation going on. So it actually reduces the amount of steps.
Yeah, so another way of looking at it is it reduces a way of saying steps is it reduces the number of calls. It's not going to say,
Yeah.
okay, we'll have a seller call you back. That's a different call, right? This is the
Yeah.
same call. As soon as they talk to that seller, they say, okay, well, hold one moment, and then they patch you through to the actual buyer. One of the things that I have found about cold calling is that I actually a bit better than texting is the fact that when you have someone that's actually picking up the phone and having a conversation, that's a little bit more of an investment of time than just like texting, sure, send me an offer. That takes very little time commitment at all. Just text me an offer. So when I found that whenever I'm actually talking to people that have come in from a cold call lead, like my gosh, those people are so much more willing and open to talk because they've just been talking about the property.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. And it's again, meet people where they're at, right? If they're in conversation mode right now, you want to capitalize on that.
absolutely. Love it, love it, love it. So, the next thing that I want to talk about is if someone may be listening to this and saying, okay, I have an idea of cold calling is XYZ. Can you give us sort of an overview for maybe people who have only done direct mail or only done text messaging and they've never done any type of cold calling? Exactly
Yep.
what does a cold call campaign consist of?
Yep. Well, I'll share a little slide here, guys, and I'll walk you through what a cold calling campaign consists of. And this is a little bit about how we're doing things differently because I've had a few people reach out and going, why are you guys doing cold calling? And aren't you the same as others? We're actually not. So here's what we want you to experience when it comes to cold calling. So we are going to do everything based upon time, not dials. So a lot of other cold call companies out there, guys, if you're paying for, say, 4,000 dials, if that means that the phone has rung 4,000 times, but even if people don't pick up, you'll still charge for those 4,000 dials. So that means, again, the value proposition with that is, yes, you'll get leads, but there's probably some leads that have been left on the table because they just didn't pick up the phone. So we're going to make sure that we're doing that based upon time. So if you've got a list of, say, 4,000, do that here as an example. We want to get that list dialed multiple times. So say a list of 5,000, if we're calling that list for 1 to 2 months, it's likely that we're actually dialing somewhere between 15 to 25,000 times, which is huge. So a lot of people are like, how does that happen? There's systems and processes that make this all happen, but that means that you're going to have an increase in pickup rate, okay? So that time, not dials, is good. Warm transfers, we've already covered. So connect with your lead instantly to make sure that you can do that. As opposed to texting, guys, and let's not use this call to talk about texting, but we are very big on compliance. And this is one thing that we couldn't find out there with a lot of other services is scrubbing your data through do not call list and litigators list. And then you know who those people are, so you can then send them direct mail. Okay, so direct mail still works, guys. It's just a little bit on the slowdown at the moment, right? So we want to make sure that we're still utilizing that data. And here's the thing, you don't want to be stuck in a lawsuit with the TCPA because trust me, I've seen it. It ain't pretty. And it's a lot more than what you think it is, right? The other thing is call recording. Why is call recording so important? Sometimes if you're not available to have the warm transfer and it's about you doing a call back, if you've got the ability to listen to that call before you call the person back, you get to check in with things like sentiment, emotion. What did they say? What did they not say? What was their approach to the different questions that they answered? So when you get back on the phone, can be like, yeah, I heard you mention to such and such about XYZ. Can we pick up on that conversation? So it allows you to really approach the conversation through a lot more structure. Making sure as well that you've got a team that are on site and sales trained. Now, our team, we've got 13 people in our cold calling team at the moment, and we're growing it. We're also growing their skills as we go as well. So the more calls that they can do for vacant land, the better. And we're always giving them feedback and adjusting, but they are on site. And that means that they've got a full-time account manager and a full-time quality assurance person on site with them, which is great. They're not someone sitting at home doing their own thing. They actually manage, which is awesome. And the other thing is daily and weekly reports. We want to make sure that we can see that the data is working. For those that know, working with Supercharged offers as well, we're very big on data. So what does that mean? You're going to get some reports that not only show you all of your leads, but how many dials we're making per day, how many of those were connected, how many were abandoned that we're going to do a callback for, because that's all part of the data cycle, right? Being able to do that time, not dials. So then what happens is on a day-to-day basis, based upon all of that, guys, on a day-to-day basis, you should get somewhere on average about 2 to 3 leads per day. There might be a day that you get 1, there might be a day that you get 5. But on average, this means that your lead pipeline and your lead flow now starts to get a lot more consistent.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And just to clarify, those 2 to 3 or even up to 5 leads a day, these are people that have spoken to a cold caller, that have said, yes, I'm interested in selling. The cold caller has collected some initial information. These are not cold leads of, why are you calling me? You are
Yeah.
talking to people that say, yes, I'm ready to start talking about my property.
And it doesn't
Fantastic.
matter what, I want to qualify something you said there, because we do ask in the cold call script, would you be open to selling for a cash offer? That's in there. But here's what I want you to think about, people. We are dealing with humans, not robots. So sometimes what is said and what is heard can be different. So you might get back on the phone and they say, yeah, I am willing to sell. You might get back on the phone with a lead that says, I'm not ready to sell now, but I'm curious what you might offer me. I'll come back to what I said before. The lead is a lead. Don't overthink where they're coming from and where they're at. Get them into your ecosystem and just start nurturing. Keep the lines of communication open. And the reason why I say that, if I think back to the hundreds of deals I've done over many years, some of the best deals, people I've actually kept in touch with, sometimes it's been 9 or 10 months and that they're now like, I'm ready to sell, you've got my deal. Just that little touch point every now and then and just keeping them in your ecosystem. The long-term impact of that is definitely something that I want you to all think about.
Absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of when you're in a seller's market and a seller is being bombarded with 15, mailers a week or whatever it is, and they've got all these different calls, where you're really going to differentiate yourself and compete with your competitors is the connection that you're creating, that nurturing of the relationship. That is what gets people to know and trust you. One of the
Yeah.
things that you pointed out that I absolutely love about the recording, and I wanted to piggyback on that for a minute because to me, that's huge. It's huge because, like you mentioned, you can go back and you can listen to see what was there, what wasn't there. But in my business, we record all of our calls and then we transcribe those using AI just really quick, and then we can use that to pop it into ChatGPT and tell us, hey, can you tell us what were the seller motivations? What was this? A whole prompt list of basically give us the Reader's Digest version and how should we approach the seller on the next call. And
I
we can
love
also,
that.
yeah, we also set up a Zap where once that transcript goes to ChatGPT, it actually filters it out and then automatically plugs it into our CRM. So we don't have to go back and get call notes. It will actually populate for us. So that recorded call feature is huge. It's
Yep.
huge.
Yeah. And it's, can I add to that? It's huge for 2 reasons. Number one, as I said, sentiment, emotion, understanding the conversation. Number 2, automation, like stuff that you just spoke about. But number 3, feedback. Now, for those that know me really well, we are always open to feedback. So if you're noticing something in the script that you want changed, you can tell us. If you're noticing that the caller is saying something in a particular way and you want that changed, you can tell us. So that on-site coach, quality assurance person will implement that same day. And I know I've got James on the call here, James Gross. I know James and Jennifer gave us some feedback a few weeks ago. Our account manager was onto it that day, got into the team, gave them the feedback, altered what needed to be done. So it's that whole holistic view of information and how we use it.
Yeah, that is fantastic. AJ, you touched on this a little bit where you were talking about compliance and lawsuits. Can you talk a little bit about, give us a maybe a 30,000 foot view of a case study where someone got into trouble because they weren't compliant?
Yeah, I can. So first of all, before I give a case study, let me give some context. Okay. There's only 2 slides I want to talk here about TCPA, because let's face it, it's a pretty boring topic, guys, but it's not boring if you get into trouble, because then all of a sudden you're listening. So it's interesting how when we talk about the TCPA and the different elements of compliance, a lot of people are like, yeah, don't worry about it, won't happen to me. I now know people that it's happened to. And so I think it is important that we do talk about it and we do educate ourselves a little bit on it. So with the compliance, so TCPA does state that people on a do not call list cannot be called for any kind of marketing, whether you're buying or selling. So it does not matter. If they're on that list, you do not want to call them. And I'll talk about my case study in a minute. And if you're not compliant, it's actually not the cold caller or me that gets in trouble, it's you. And the TCPA has a way of breaking through that veil and getting to the person who requested the call, right? So that's another thing. Now, again, coming back to my value of integrity, we're all about keeping our customers safe. With SMSing, it's not about an if or a when with TCPA. There's probably people that we all know in here that have either had their numbers banned, they've had a threat of being sued, all these different things that we're not that far away, right? And the way that marketing is going in 2024 with all the different AI tools, and we now know that robo-dials are a no-go, which is a voice-activated thing. We're going to see a lot more changes happening around this stuff, guys, so we need to be ahead of it. So cold calling is safe, but only if we're following the regulations. So scrubbing for compliance is key. But for me, it's not just about compliance, it's also integrity for the person. Because if I'm the kind of person, let's say I'm an old person and I don't want to be preyed on, so I've got myself on a do not call list. If I then go and call that person, for me, that's not doing the right thing by them. Okay, so if I come back to that whole essence of integrity, it's about a DTRT. So DTRT is my acronym for do the right thing. Okay, sometimes in business, doing the right thing is often hard, but it's the right thing to do. So therefore we should do it. Further on here, as I mentioned, TCPA does have the ability to circumnavigate any legal entity. So when they go through and prosecute someone, they will bypass the cold caller in that business and go straight to the person. Our partnering company that we use for cold calling, some of you were on a session that I did with Logan from Global Profit Advisors. Logan and his team, they have been cold calling. They've got quite a huge team, but we've got a dedicated team with them. The reason why we went with them, they've got experience in all this stuff. They've been cold calling for real estate now for more than 8 years, and they've got a very dedicated process that we can stand by from TCPA to overcome any challenges around compliance. And the reason we know that is they were actually one of the companies that helped get Core Properties out of trouble. Core Properties is another wholesale company in America. They had a huge lawsuit, 1.8 million settlement. And now they still do cold calling, but they only use the same team that we use. So cold calling fines and SMS fines from the TCPA can be anywhere from 1,500 to no cap, depending upon the damage that's been done through the complainant themselves. We've got to be compliant with this stuff. Now, to come back to a case study as well, the main reason, and I'll be fully transparent here, guys, the main reason why we also wanted to start our own cold calling company is some of the services we were using weren't really worried about compliance. And we did have a customer that got called out on that. Somebody was called that was on a do not call list, and they were on a litigators list, and they went to blackmail our customer as a result. That for me was like the moment that I went, time out, we've got to bring this internal and we've got to put some structure around this. So we immediately stopped all the cold calling and switched to our own and got that up and running in a few weeks. And now I'm really proud to say that everything we do comes from that place of compliance.
Yeah, that's remarkable. One of the things that, I was talking with a colleague just the other day about this, and one of the things that just really surprised me is the fact that there are people that literally have a business model where they try to trap marketers, right, into lawsuits. Like this is a whole industry. And I was blown away. But there are people that actively have a business model, and that's how they make money. That's how they monetize, is that they trap these marketers. So it's not just like
this particular customer that, just to add to that, Kendall, this particular customer that did get caught in the middle, the person that accidentally got called literally went to blackmail them. And he had the entire model. So you got to pay me something by this time and this day, or I'll be suing you. I've now got your company name. I've got your company address. I'm on a do not call list. So if you don't pay me, expect to see that soon. we managed to work through it, which is good. So it did have a happy ending. We got everything resolved. But you're right. There's people out there that are preying on other people. And unfortunately, we got to keep everyone safe in the current day and age.
Yeah, huge. So it's not just the, oh, if I randomly run into a disgruntled person that just has a bone to pick, there are professionals out there, professional litigators that are looking to take you down.
What world have we gone into? And I just want to
Right.
say what Marty's got here, right? My number got that he had registered got flagged, even though they weren't mass texting. Honestly, you can get flagged for the smallest of things these days, and it can put a real bump in your business.
Yeah, it really can. And
Yeah,
if you
and
are,
to Ken's question here, there's only issues when they're being contacted, even on do not call. Correct, Ken. So if they are not on a do not call list, it is 100% compliant to call that person and have a conversation. The worst thing that's going to happen is that person says not interested and hangs up. Done. That's it. And in that case, if they do, we don't call them again because we don't want to get annoying. So we're very respectful of people's boundaries.
love that. I love that. So AJ, can you talk a little bit about what makes a successful cold call campaign? How do you nurture cold call leads? So once that lead comes in, maybe you've had a warm transfer. You've talked a
Yep.
little bit about nurturing, but can you speak more to maybe some follow-up sequences that you've seen work really well or some follow-up cadences?
Yeah, sure can. So obviously we've gone through warm transfers. So just to recap on that, remember, excuse me if you can hear my cat meowing in the background here. Remember, they're cold. They don't know you yet. So when you've got the warm transfer that comes through, just ask questions and be genuinely curious about them and their property. Don't make it about you. Make it about them. Know and trust, right? People's favorite topic is themselves. So get to know them, get to know their property, and set the expectation of what's going to happen next. So I'm going to run some numbers, check the property. I'm going to call back by this date with an offer. If you can, get their email and email them an offer and just let them know that, because a lot of people are a bit reticent to give emails these days, just let them know, look, that's actually going to speed up the process for us if I can get your email. Because then what I want you to do, once you've got an email, as soon as you've hung up the phone, send them an email just to say thanks for your time. Send them a link to your website, an ebook, a video, anything that you can send them that's going to build on that know and trust factor. Okay, even if it's just a thank you email, right? People doing business with people, this is just respect 101. This now starts to get them into your ecosystem. And by the way, for anyone doing marketing with us, as soon as you send them your website, we then coming back to omni-channel marketing, we then attach a pixel and we'll keep pushing ads out to them too. So now they'll see you on Google, Facebook, and Instagram, wherever they're roaming. So all about getting that all working. In terms of nurturing the lead, here's some different practices that I would say. First things first, always follow up your lead within 24 hours, even if you don't have an update. Now that just might mean the following day that you might even just SMS them to keep it non-confrontational. Hey, it's AJ here. We spoke yesterday. Just letting you know I'm still running some numbers and I haven't forgotten you. Okay. The reason why I say that, keeping promises is massive in this business. I hear so many stories of property owners that are like, yeah, I had someone call me and they said they were going to call me back and they just didn't. Or I had someone say they're going to send me an offer and 2 weeks later and I haven't gotten anything. So it comes back to this acronym here. This is one of my favorite acronyms. Again, it comes from a place of integrity. Call it DWIZZYWID. You can say what you like here, but it is do what you say you will do. Now think about this from a human to human interaction, folks. You're trying to get a deal. If you can keep on your promises as to how you communicate with this person, the trust subconsciously automatically just goes up. So the minute you can keep your promises, even if you don't have an offer ready, just keep in touch with these people. Just let them know that you haven't forgotten them. Just even that means you're doing so much more than what a lot of other people out there are not doing. Then what I want you to do is send off a one. As soon as you've sent it, follow up, check in and nurture. What do I mean by that? If you do have their email address, so let's say you've sent them a contract via, say, DocuSign or PandaDoc, 10 minutes later, call them. Hey, Kendall, I've emailed you through the contract. I just want to know if you've got your computer or if you can open it on your phone. Let me walk you through it now. Let me just see what questions you've got and see where we're at. Again, delivering on promises, keeping lines of communication open, and showing that you're approachable, okay? So send off a one, follow up, check in. If you don't get offer one back by the expiry date, send out offer two. So let's just say that you put a 3-week expiry date on your contracts. So day 21, nothing's back. Day 22, out goes offer two. Now, when you're running your comps, so when that cold call comes through, guys, I want you to look at your comps and set yourself a range. Now, that range doesn't have to be big. It might be like a 10% range, right? Might be a property that you go, my first offer is 50,000. Second offer is going to be like 52,125. Third offer is going to be 54,320. And then you've still got up to 55,000 to work with. You might even go a little bit more depending on the deal. But you want to make sure you've got a range. And within your CRM or your structure, make sure you've got flags that every single time an offer expires, out goes the next one. Out goes the next one. Now, why is this so important? It comes back to this point here. You just never know when someone's circumstances change. Now, I'll come off share and come back to you all. I have done deals over the years that it was no, yes. In the space of those 5 months, no, not ready to sell. The month 6, now all of a sudden, and this was one case in particular, all of a sudden they're in divorce court. Didn't want the property anymore, wanted to sell the asset beforehand, split the cash together before things got nasty. So life happens to people on the daily. So that's why you got to keep those leads going, keep those offers, keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah, so many great pieces of advice there in terms of nurturing the lead. I love what you said about following up immediately after you send that offer. I'm a little bit even more bullish than that. What I like to do is I will send them the PandaDoc or DocuSign purchase agreement while we're on the phone on call too, because I want to go
Even better.
through that with them, right? I want to go through each term of that contract, explain everything, answer any questions, and then I can say, okay, if everything looks good to you, go ahead and hit that sign button so I can make sure that it gets over into our system and we don't have any snags. And that's really
Even better.
yeah, that's
Yep.
driven up that sign rate significantly. Love what you said about email. Email is huge. I think that any marketing company will tell you email addresses are king, right? Because you own that information. One of the things that we do to get email addresses is I will actually schedule every single call. So if I have a follow-up call, I like to schedule that using a free software called Calendly. So it puts you get their email information, and then it will automatically start sending them reminders about the call that you have scheduled with them. It'll even put them on their Google Calendar. Even if they've accepted that meeting or not, it'll still put it on their Google Calendar if it's connected to their email address. And so just by getting that, starts to help show them that you're professional, that they can trust you, that you are really communicative, and that's all automated. You just put in their email, and then it automatically reminds them, which is
I
really,
love
really
that.
fantastic.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah,
a few people in the chat that are using DocuSign and a few things. That's great, guys. Yeah, the more that you can do that and automate that offer process, the better. And a lot of those tools like DocuSign as well, you can also do some automations in there of reminders of the contract. And if they've opened it and viewed it, sometimes you can even set yourself it'll give you a notification. Not all of the platforms do this, but some do, that they've opened it. Now, if that notification comes through, great. Give them a phone call, text. Hey, I can see you've opened the document. Have you got questions? Just keep those lines of communication open. And the main reason why I say this, it comes back to the power in the relationship, right? Especially when we're in a seller's market. What I want all of you to think about is that you are the one negotiating on this contract, not the seller. I want you to have the mindset of, I can close this deal and I'm in control of this deal. And if you have that mindset, then you're the one that dictates what happens next, not the seller. Okay. If you're in control of the narrative, if you're in control of the conversation and the flow, you will find that you'll do a lot more conversions. If you
1,000%.
leave it over to the seller, then you've lost control of that conversation.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you more. That's why in every single interaction, every step of the process in my business, I make sure that I am controlling exactly what the expectations are. I don't ask the seller, when's a good time for me to call you? I will give them, I have this time on this day and this time on this day. Which one would you prefer? That way you control the expectation. So I really love that. The other thing that I think communication is so important is when it comes to just having them understand what the next steps are, or maybe even understanding what the purchase agreement is actually saying. When someone doesn't understand something, if they're confused, they'll fill in the blanks, and then a confused mind always says no. So, making sure that they understand exactly what you're talking about, giving them a timeline. Okay, this is going to happen. You're going to sign the purchase agreement, and then this and this will happen. That I cannot tell you how much that has changed our lead conversion, making sure that we have very clear explanations. For those
Yeah.
of you wondering about those,
Explanation.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. A good explanation means a good expectation. There we go. That needs to be on
Mm,
a t-shirt. A
that's
good
so good.
explanation means a good, what did I say? A good explanation means a good
Expectation.
expectation. Yeah.
There you
Because I want you
go.
to think about this too, right? When someone has an expectation in their mind, now this might be like, let's just use a really typical example of a husband and wife at home. The dishwasher's finished running, and in your brain, you've got an expectation that the other person's going to empty that, and they don't. So guess what we do? We get frustrated. We get angry. We're like, why didn't you empty that? First of all, there was no conversation around it. There was no expectation set. So this is what I want you to take into your conversations with your sellers. When you're not crystal clear about what happens next, they will make it up in their own head about what should or shouldn't happen. And then again, you've lost control of the narrative.
Absolutely. And if you're wondering, what are some examples look like of how to explain that or how to be crystal clear? I have my seller
Yeah.
scripts that I will be sharing with you guys in just a few minutes. I'll be popping that PDF in the chat. So everyone on the call live is going to get those seller scripts so you can see how I ask for certain things and how I set
Yeah.
those expectations up.
Yeah. I just want to comment on Richard's thing in here. He said he deals a lot with elderly people and getting email addresses is a tough one. Yeah, it can be, Rich. Funnily enough, like I've dealt with people in their 80s and 90s that actually have email addresses because they've had them for 20 years. So a lot of them do. The second thing I would ask on that, Rich, is do they have a family member that has email? Have they got a son or a daughter or a partner or something that might have an email address? But even if they don't, still back it up by sending an offer as well. So if there's no emails, just get an offer out anyway.
When you do come across the people that don't have email addresses, they don't have access to anyone with email addresses, you can still send a purchase agreement virtually by using a service like certifiedmaillabels.com or something like that, where you can, send these one-offs from your computer and they'll send an actual piece of mail. So we've done that as well. If they are okay with being able to at least take a picture of the contract and send it over to you, my title company accepts that so they can start the ball rolling. Once they get that photo of their signed purchase agreement, they start the ball rolling on that title
Yeah,
search.
I'm laughing at the fact that people are laughing at AOL on here because, yeah, it's like Hotmail, right? It's so old. And Jason said, can you send text links for online? Yeah, there's definitely some software out there, Jason, that you can send a contract via text. What a lot of old people struggle with then, though, is how to sign it. I saw something a while ago. Someone did a little post that it was like they were having trouble with their elder person signing the contract. And when they got on a phone with them, they had a pen on their phone and they were trying to do this.
Oh,
So
bless. That's
you've
so
got to be
cute.
cognizant of the fact that people are at different technological places of evolution as well.
Yeah, so sweet. Yeah, Ken, you just said, what about through mail? Yeah, the certified mail labels will actually send an actual mail piece, but you don't have to go to the post office. You can just send it directly through your computer. All right. So, one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about, AJ, because you are so good at this particular topic, is can you talk a little bit about someone that may be on a time crunch, they have a W-2, they're trying to do the time management thing, they're trying to get their business rolling. How can they implement a cold calling sequence, the warm transfers? How does it just all fit together? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So now we're no longer talking about sellers. We're talking about like everyone on this call, right?
Everyone on the
Um,
call.
Yep. And people that are looking to get into real estate and vacant land as well. So look, there's a couple of different things here. The first thing I would say is before you even get into this business, really sit back and think about your goal. And I know I don't want to get all esoteric here and talk about what's our why and all the big stuff there. Like we get that, right? We don't need to talk about that. But I think it is good to really understand your bigger purpose as to why you want to do this. The reason why is if you are still doing a W-2 and you're also trying to build this up on the side, you're going to have times where your time is crunched. And so to keep that North Star in mind about let's remind myself why we're doing this keeps you grounded. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is in thinking about where your time is best spent. So what I like to do with our customers is ask them, so what's the activities that you can do that are moving the needle activities? Moving the needle meaning revenue generating, right? Revenue is, it's like a little rev machine. So what are the activities you can do that you want to keep in your control to do that? Negotiating with sellers, talking with realtors and getting them on your team, talking with your title company and managing the closing process, like all that stuff is what generates revenue. And then ask yourself, what are the different things that you can outsource that you can have done for you? Now, obviously, a lot of people know that's what we do on the acquisition side. There's now services out there that do it on the disposition side. They'll even sell a property for you. So Robin Seib and his online land market, they're doing deals with that. So there's different services out there you can use. So number one, think about your time. Where is your time best spent? And also think about that through the lens of your learning curve, because it's really interesting to think about what are the things that I'm confident with now versus the things that I might want to outsource and then as I get more confident, I'll bring that back in, because you don't have to do everything, guys. And I think this is where I see a lot of people give up when it comes to real estate investing, because they are literally trying to do it all. And then they get into a place of overwhelm. And then they get into a place of, I come home from my job, I've got 4 hours to work on this, and now I'm exhausted. So it really is making sure you're always checking in with yourself about where you're spending your time. Secondary to that, though, if we think about cold calling. So if cold calling, depending upon the volume that you're doing, if that's getting you like 1 to 3 leads a day, most people should be able to do that part-time. So what I would then suggest is that you're segmenting your week out like this. So cold calls are coming in when you get home from work. So if you've got a W-2, you're getting home from work. Obviously, you might not need to take advantage of warm transfers, but that's okay. You get home, you listen to the recordings, you call the person back. You have a quick preliminary conversation with them about their property. So that might be like half an hour to 45 minutes every night. You're returning those calls, finding out, getting them into your ecosystem. Then maybe Mondays and Wednesdays is your comps day. They're the 2 days that you're running your numbers, checking your due diligence and getting your offers ready. Tuesdays and Thursdays is when you're sending out offers and calling these people back to make an offer. Friday is when you're doing follow-up. So you might just think about your time in chunks. And again, as long as you're managing the expectation of the person on the other end of the phone, be honest with them and say, look, I do have a full-time job. So I'm doing this outside of hours, really want to buy your property. I'll be calling you back. So tomorrow I'm going to run my numbers. Thursday, I'll be calling you back with an offer. Is around this time work for you? So it's just, again, managing that expectation. Yeah, as you said there, Jason, setting up a meeting. And again, when we're doing cold calling, if you want your cold caller to set up a meeting for you, they can do that. So if you let us know like when you're available, we can put that into the script and actually make that happen. So again, different things we can do there that tailor to your availability, your working hours, how you want to run your business.
That is huge. I love that. Now, AJ, if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, you sold me on cold calling. They're used to doing text messaging in-house. And so they say, I'm just going to take the numbers that we've skip traced and I'm going to do cold calling on my own. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of hiring a firm like yours to do the cold calling on behalf of the seller, or excuse me, on behalf of the buyer, rather than the buyer trying to do the cold calls on their own?
Yep, 100%. So a couple of benefits. Number one, compliance. So when you go to a skip tracer, most of them out there don't do compliance checking. It's actually a very separate service to a skip tracer that looks at litigator lists and do not call lists. So it's not typically part of when you're going and getting phone numbers. It's not typically part of that. And in all honesty, to do the litigator and do not call stuff is expensive. It's expensive and time consuming, but it has to be done. So I guess if you are going to go cold call yourself, the first thing you want to think about is, am I being compliant? Because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. Second thing is, how much time do you have? So if you're going to cold call yourself, that's a lot of dialing. That's a lot of picking up the phone and doing things yourself. And the time it takes to actually push in that number and dial and wait for it to ring, that in itself is time consuming. When you're outsourcing to a company that uses like a speed dialer, the phone is just constantly going to the next one. They're not even waiting for a ring. It's like whoever picks up, they start to talk to. And then as soon as that person hangs up and they take their notes, the next one's coming through. So making sure you're looking at the right systems and processes to do volume easily. And that stuff is not easy. So it's that, and also really thinking about what's the first impression that you want that person to have? Because if you're not good at cold calling and you get a bit fumbly on the call and you're not setting up the call right or setting up the expectation, it can actually feel like really hard work. And trust me when I say this, guys, cold calling is not an easy job. I'm sure if I asked most of you on this call, would you spend 8 hours a day doing cold calling? Most of you would rather stick pins in your eyes. Yeah, James just went, nope, definitely not for me. And it's not for me either. I love talking to people and I can talk underwater for those that know me, but it's, yeah, as Aaron said, it's mentally draining. So therefore you want to have someone who is trained in how to do it, has the right resilience to do it, understands the process, and making sure that they're following what they need to get the most value out of those leads for you. Yeah, Miriam asked, is my team out of the US? Miriam, they're actually not. They're based in Egypt. We did have some cold callers in South Africa, but I was finding the accent was not that great. So our main team is actually based in Egypt. Now you might, for a lot of you listening, you might go, Egypt, wow. There's actually some land people out there that have got full-on teams in Egypt. I don't know if any of, it wasn't RJ, he's our friend in Austin. Yes. He's got like a whole team in Egypt that basically manages his business for us. So Egypt, they tend to be very sales-driven people in Egypt. They're very professional. And sure, yeah, Egypt has a really good work ethic and their English is pretty reasonable. We do actually test all of our cold callers. They must be a 4 out of 5 on English. And we've got a full-time coach that's helping them out with tonality and speed and cadence and stuff like that as well.
That's fantastic. Now, AJ, I know that we've talked about cold calling. I think that so many of us now, if you are on the fence about cold calling, probably, okay, I get it. I understand the buzz around cold calling. Can you talk about what the expectations are for someone that wants to work with you and your company on cold calling? How does that work? Do they provide criteria? Do you pull the lit? How does all of that work?
Yep, it's a fully done for you service, guys. So essentially, you just need to give us your wish list. What is the types of properties that you want to go after? What's the minimum assessed value, areas, zip codes, property types, all that stuff? What's your wish list? We'll then go and pull the data for you. We'll scrub it, cleanse it, parse it, skip trace it, put it through the do not call and litigators list, get it ready to upload to your CRM. We want it in your CRM before the cold call starts if we can. What we'll then do whilst the data's being done, we'll allocate you a cold caller. We do have a dedicated team. Frank, who knew? We do have a dedicated team. So whilst we're rotating people through different campaigns, we'll wait for the perfect caller to be available. So we do need about a 1 to 2 week lead time. Reason for that is we don't just want to give you a random person. We want that person to be trained, ready to go, ready to start. And most of our callers now, they've been with us for 2 months and just over. So we're starting to rotate them through different campaigns. So yeah, we'll get the data ready. We'll introduce you to your account manager and they will be in touch with you on a weekly basis. They'll give you your lead sheet, your call reports, your call recordings, everything will be ready to go. All we need from you is that buy box criteria and obviously where you want your leads to go to from a warm transfer or an email perspective, and then we're good to go.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I love that it's a one-stop shop. I'm not having to go to DataTree or some type of list provider, try to pull that, clean and scrub my own list, or have a virtual assistant do that, then get it to you. I love that it is all-inclusive.
Yeah.
Outsource is the name of the game.
Yes, exactly. Frank, in terms of CRMs, look, there's lots out there. Personally, I like Pebble. There's some good stuff in Go High Level as well. Pebble for me is really great because it does integrate with some of the stuff we've talked about today, and we can easily upload data into that for you. Can you communicate with the cold caller or not? Yes, you can. So when that cold caller does a warm transfer, you'll be speaking with them because they'll do a little introduction and they'll tell you about the call before they connect you. We've also got your account manager that you can give feedback to. So if you've listened to some calls and you want to adjust a few things, as I said, you've got a direct line to them. So they'll be available every day to help you out with stuff there as well, Ken.
Excellent. And what does it look like when the leads actually come in? Are you delivering those via email, or is there some kind of dashboard or a live Google Doc or something?
Yeah, it's actually all of the above. So no
All of the
lead is going
above.
to slip through the cracks. Yeah. So when the lead is warm transferred to you, they'll then be recorded on a lead sheet. So we have a shared Google sheet that will give you the name of the caller, the time and date of the call, the property owner, property information, the answers to the script, and if that call was transferred or not, and whether there's a callback needed or not. And then you'll have the recording link in there. Secondary to that, leads will be put into your CRM. So if you've got an email for, say, Pebble, or just an email to you or your team, that will be also emailed to you. So you'll have ample opportunity to make sure that nothing gets slipped through the cracks.
That is amazing. I love that you can populate those into the CRM and that's not another step that you have to go. It just shows up and it's, okay, go work the lead. That's amazing. I love that.
Go work the lead.
I love that. So, AJ, I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Thanks so much. You guys have been phenomenal. Some incredible information. Thank you, AJ, for sharing. This has been so much fun. Thank you
You're so
guys
welcome.
for joining us and asking so many remarkable questions. Cold calling will change the game. I've been on the cold train for the last year, and I can tell you that it's only getting better. Definitely schedule a call with AJ, and you'll be in fantastic hands. All right,
Yeah.
until then.
And just as a reminder, as I said, guys, the next few days I'm here in Australia. It's pretty busy. Next week I will be in the States. So my calendar, if you can't find a time by end of the week, what I might do is email you all on Friday just with an updated calendar for next week, because there'll be a whole bunch more times there. So yeah, all good.
Love it. All righty. Thank you guys, everyone. This has been absolutely fantastic. I hope you have a fantastic week, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next one. Until then, take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.